was held up principally by the weather conditions. Because there was such a low cloud base and because the rain was so heavy, helicopters couldn't fly troops and supplies forward to Mount Kent, from which the military intended to attack Port Stanley. And I wrote a story basically about the weather. I wrote about 1,000 words just about the weather and how the weather was holding us up. And the key sentence in the piece was that only the weather now holds us back from Stanley. When this dispatch reached London, it had been changed into only the politicians now hold us back from Stanley.
What are you going to do with dissent at home? Well, that turned out to be very easy. In the name of patriotism, you call upon the nation to get behind our effort. You do that probably through a statement by the Prime Minister, and that atmosphere is immediately picked up by those newspapers who either felt that the war was a just one and it should be fought the way it was being fought, or who saw an opportunity to consolidate their circulation, perhaps improve it, by adopting an attitude of fierce, patriotic endeavour. And that pressure tended to suppress any dissent. So with a brilliantly controlled operation that doesn't look to be censorship, you've got total control over what is reported about the war.
Well, I think there was a period for a short time at the beginning of the Falklands when at least some parts of the media were setting themselves up, or appearing to set themselves up, as an impartial referee. And, you know, the same degree of credibility was being given to the Argentine as was being given to the British.
Isn't that the role of the press, to be impartial?
It's a new one on me, if it's so. I mean, I'm sure it's part of press ethics. I doubt very much whether it has ever been impartial. Everybody's biased. I'm biased, you're biased. And I just don't believe in this great piece of objectivity and you know, lack of bias. We all have emotions, we all have feelings, we all have attitudes.
Sir Frank is right. We all have our biases. The problem seems to be that the moment journalists run seriously against the grain of established thinking, as represented by the government and the Ministry of Defence, they are accused of not being objective, as if objectivity is all right only as long as it is part of the official line. This, of course, applies in both war and peace. Perhaps a truly objective appraisal of Bluff Cove, where 50 men died like sitting ducks, would not have been to allow the bravery and heroism of the men to obscure the fact of a blunder and a disaster.
The self-censorship of both editors at home and correspondents at the front, not to tell the truth about the horrible way in which men die, and using it as an excuse for not doing that, the sparing of the feelings of relatives back home again,